Good day, Covenant Life. Hello, hello. This is Pastor Andrew again, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day whenever and wherever you are. So, this week, in our second episode of the Covenant Stories podcast, we are sitting down with Sister Heather Lee, and alongside her is her husband, Jerry, and we are just going to hear Heather's incredible story. So last week, we got to hear Brother Jerry's story, and it was awesome. And then this week, man, Sister Heather really takes us on a journey. So just be warned, there are some major ups and downs in this thing. It is a roller coaster, and honestly, you may not be ready, but it is so good. So as we get into the story of Heather, let me again just lead us in a word of prayer to set our minds and our hearts in the right posture, just to receive what God has for each one of us from this testimony. So whenever and wherever you are, just take a moment now and join with me in a word of prayer. Father, God, we love you so much, and we just thank you, Lord. We thank you for just being so beautiful and holy. Thank you for using our stories to bring ourselves and others closer to you. And God, as we get into this story, we just ask that you prepare our hearts. Just prepare us to receive whatever it is that we each need to receive from this, God. We thank you for Sister Heather and Brother Jerry, and we just thank you for their willingness to be vulnerable with their church and share their hearts. Again, Lord, thank you for the people that you've made in each of them, and we just ask for your hand to continue to guide their path. God, that path has and continues to bring so many people close to you, and so we just ask for you to continue with that guidance. And Lord, please just help posture the hearts of anyone at any time who may be listening, Lord. Posture all of our hearts to receive from this moment and this testimony. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so without further ado, this one was recorded a couple months ago, but this is Sister Heather Lee's testimony. Let's go. Today with Heather Lee, and joined also by her husband Jerry, and we are just sitting down to hear Heather's story and testimony. So, Heather, where would you like to start?
I would like to say I'll give my testimony today. There are going to be parts of it that I'm not going to share specific things for multiple reasons. The Lord a while back shared with me a statement, and he said that your testimony, your full testimony, is not for everyone all the time. So I allow the Lord to lead me as I give my testimony as to what parts are for what people. Yeah. You know, there are things in my life that I still don't share some things, because there are still people that have not come to know the Lord in my testimony, and I'm still waiting for them. And in waiting for them, I'm being respectful of how I tell my testimony, so that they don't ever get to the place where they feel hurt or condemned over the things that have happened, because I am in my life and in the things that have happened. There's a book a long time ago. It was a series of unfortunate events, and my life has been a series of unfortunate events. But those events that happened were people who did not see themselves correctly in the Lord. So I see them now as people who, if they had, they would have never done what they had done. Yeah. So I'm just waiting. So while I'm waiting, I'm careful as to what parts of my story I tell, and when they get to that point, then I'll be able to share maybe more, or I share it more in intimate settings. You know, when I feel led of the Lord. Yeah. No,
that is. I first of all appreciate you prefacing everything that way, because it is important for people to understand that this medium is a very public medium, and so information and truth is applicable in varying levels that depending on the circumstance. This specific circumstance is very broad.
Yeah.
And so it is very important to understand the importance of just being tactful with like respecting other people's privacy and all that stuff. And so just wanted to start out by saying thank you for just giving me and everybody in the future who does this Covenant Stories proper understanding of like just how to go about sharing your testimony in a medium like this. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is all about Jesus, and at the end of the day, there's going to always be. We all have a story, we all have a history, and we all have a past, and there's going to be things in those that that we want them to always bring people closer to the Lord.
Yeah.
And in our testimonies, sometimes they can, if we're not careful, we can step on people in ways that we don't intend to.
Yeah.
So just being careful.
Yeah.
So I'm Heather. I am from a really small town. It's not far from here. Of course, all of us around here, small town for the most part.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Dade County. Yeah, it's I think at the time when I left, we had like $6 Generals, and I think they were growing more out back.
Wow.
I'm not really sure. No, they don't have that many, but it's a lot. So I think it's great. I was born to amazing parents that were really young when they had me, and they were still figuring out life themselves. They weren't quite sure, what they were doing with their life. And so then they had this, I like to refer to myself as awesome bundle of joy. And so they had me, and I have a brother that was born into that household. And my parents, like I said, they were young. They got divorced when I was 5. There were some kind of crazy circumstances in their marriage. Various things happened that caused the divorce. And it's a great story for them to tell one day. So my mom got custody of my brother and myself, and my mom didn't really she didn't really have a lot of stability at that point in her life. So we bounced around a lot. We lived in I tease people or tease my mom sometimes. I say that we lived in every apartment complex in Dade County except for the one that wouldn't allow children, which is not, it's true, but that's not why we didn't live there because, that's not true. But we did. We bounced around a lot. I slept on some couches. We didn't have a lot of financial resources on my mom's end. My dad paid child support. At that particular time, he wasn't doing as good about it as he eventually did, so it wasn't as consistent as what you would like. But so we didn't have a lot of money. We were pretty poor. And so we bounced around, we lived at different places, and my mom took us to church some. There was a church in Trenton that ran a bus ministry. I don't talk about it often, but I thought about it when I was thinking about this, and I thought about this bus ministry, and they did Pop-Tarts on the bus.
Nice.
Yeah, you got Pop-Tarts and Capri Suns. Nice. And so we did that some, but they did children's church, and they did Bible verse memorization.
Yeah.
And then they would take us for ice cream.
Nice.
It was great. It
Yeah.
was absolutely gret. Earliest memories of church are right around there.
Yeah.
I was, 5, 6, 7 years old. So my mom didn't have, she didn't pay bills well. We didn't have a stability. My dad at that particular time was doing some shenanigans. So he wasn't as present as what he would have liked to have been or what we needed him to be. My grandparents took a major role in my life on both sides, on my mom's side and my dad's side. On my mom's side, they let us live with them for a little while. And on my dad's side, my grandparents, they did everything. If it needed to be done, they did it. If it was paying for lunches, if it was taking us to the doctor, medicine, sick days, you name it, they did it. Like, they were just there. My dad did some traveling, and so he would not always be home on our, quote, weekends that we were with him. So my grandparents would take us.
Yeah.
And just phenomenal people. My granddaddy was the one that told me I shouldn't clap or sing in church because I can't keep a tune and I can't sing. So, and it's still true to this day. Can't do either. So, it's great. But, anyway, so when I was, 9 years old, my mom met, my sister's dad, and, she got pregnant and had my little sister, and they, he couldn't see us, living in that situation where we didn't have a home with his baby as well. So he and my mom found a place, and we actually got a stable home on that side. So that was great. It can be very traumatic for a child to go to school and not know where you're coming home to at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know for sure. And you don't know if you're going to have, if the electricity bill is going to be paid, and if it is going to be paid, who's going to pay it, or the water bill or whatever. You just don't know. And groceries were not always easy to come by either. So when we had this house, it was like, it was just a 3-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home, but you would have thought it was like, a castle to us.
Yeah.
We were thrilled. Now, granted, my dad still had his place, but we were with my mom 90% of the time. We saw my dad every other weekend. So this was important. And so mom's side gets a house. Dad decides he's going to get right with the Lord, and he goes to church. Like, this is great. So dad started going to church, and he got saved, and it was glorious. He gave his testimony in front of the church. I remember hiding because it was embarrassing. I was 9 and I had a book I was reading, and it wasn't the Bible, I'm ashamed to say. Sorry, Jerry. I was reading, and
luckily you've repented since then.
I slid down in my seat and was like, I can't believe he's saying this out loud to the whole church. Is this what a testimony is? It was crazy. It was great. He did it, and it was great. So I remembered one Sunday after church, I was in the car. We had left church. Dad had a Monte Carlo with the T-tops, shout out. And it was blue. And I remember we were listening to probably the Gaithers, because that's what we listened to. And I said, Dad, when they do that prayer thing at the end, I feel like I want to go down there. And he said, well, maybe you should. I was like, well, all right then. So the next Sunday that we were with Dad and went to church, I got saved. And I remember, just the feeling. I remember the church. I remember the atmosphere. I remember we were in a Baptist church, and we got a little book. They gave you a book, and you got to go through the book to learn about your new life in Christ. And I'm just like 9 years old. I'm so excited. So I tell my Dad, I'm going to be a preacher. This was a Baptist church in the 90s.
Any church in the 90s.
True. They were like, so my dad and his amazing newfound life in Christ, he was his, baby girl, women don't preach. And I was like, well, all right, that's fine. I'll be a teacher. It's fine. Like, it's fine. Like, that zeal for the Lord that you can't, when somebody is zealous for the Lord, like, they're zealous. Like, you can
Nothing
be like,
goes wrong.
Yeah, you'd be like, you can't jump off that mountain. Well, yes, I can. You just watch me. The Lord's going to catch me. Like, it doesn't matter. They're just zealous. They're just ready to go. And it's like, Jerry's like, we're going to go overseas. Well, how are you going to get there? I don't know yet, but we're going. Like, it's just what it is. Like, there's
planes. We can walk.
There's no boundaries when you're zealous. Like, we should keep that zealous. Like, we should stay like that. Like there's no boundaries. Like, it's just an open, wide world of opportunity for the Lord. Yeah. So I'm going to teach now. And my dad, of course, I guess, at the time he's just like, whatever. And so I got a comic strip Bible, and I had these Christmas bears and various stuffed animals, and I'd set them up on my bed. I had me a little podium, and I would teach to my dolls. And I loved it. It was great. I had so much fun. And I remember I was just zealous and loved the Lord. And so we did vacation Bible school, and I was super, I find this hard to believe, super competitive. I had to learn all of my Bible verses faster and better than everyone. And so...
not surprising.
So I lived for Friday when I got to recite them in front of my family. I was so proud. And a little testimony story about my dad when he got saved. my dad had, at different points in my life, he had shown me a lot of impatience. And when he did get saved, one day he was working on the church van outside, and he sent me inside to get the keys to the van. And I go inside and I get them, and I have them around my finger, and I'm spinning them. And I come outside and I'm just, bouncing, a little kid, swinging the keys around, and they just flew. Keys went everywhere. And my dad, and I'm like, I am in so much trouble. I'm in so much trouble. And my dad was like, it's okay. Like, we'll pick them up. Like, it was totally fine. I was like, oh, that's Jesus. Like, that's got to be different. Like, that's something different, So anyway, so mom's house is rocking along, and dad is doing his thing, and all is as good as could be expected. And I'm going to be a teacher for the Lord. So my grandparents my dad kind of phased out of church over a year or two. My grandparents still went, and my grandparents, again, going back to just this, like, you have those people in your life that are just good to the core. They changed churches so that they would have to drive by my house, which this was a long ways out of the way, so that they could pick me up to take me to church.
Wow.
So, we went to church, and so they would take me as often as they could. My mom had a baby, so I had my little sister, and she was a precious little munchkin. So I was 9, 10-ish when she was born, so there's a little bit of an age gap. So she was kind of like my baby doll. Like, you just kind of like love them, and they take care of them. But that role went really far. My stepdad was an alcoholic and was substantially worse after he and my mom got married. He would, when he got paid, it very rarely made it home. He would be at a beer store somewhere with it. My mom was working, and she was having to work whatever job she could get. I mean, if it was at night, if it was night and day, like whatever that was, that's what she was doing. And so it took her out of the home a lot. And if he came home, he was passing out drunk. So I took care of my sister. Yeah. So I became mom to my little sister, and did the best job that a 19-year-old could do. Yeah. I would feed her at night. I would find clothes, passies. I would do it all. I missed a lot of my middle school years of school because I would have to be at home with my sister because we didn't have a babysitter. Like, there were a lot of those. And my mom got called into the school once. This was before they were like they are on truancy now. Like, you couldn't get away with this now. But they called my mom to the school, and they were asking her about it. And she said that, was she making bad grades? And they were like, well, no. She's like, well, then I don't see the problem. And I didn't. I was a straight A student. The Lord has just always blessed me with the ability to fake my way into understanding anything. So
she's incredibly intelligent.
She just got a pass or whatever. So my mom, because she worked all the time, she was angry a lot, and her anger would produce and manifest itself in ridiculous ways. And she was just under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and there was just a lot that, looking back on it now, I see differently than I did at the time.
Yeah.
And again, we have a house, but we're back to, we have no money, because everything we have is either going to alcohol, and my mom's not making enough to sustain. So my mom bought a lottery ticket one time, and we took it to the gas station. She bought it at the gas station, and she scratched it off before we left, and we had enough money to buy milk.
Wow.
And we were so excited.
Wow.
Like, in my house, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. So my mom sent my brother one time into the bar where my stepdad was to try to get him to get money from my stepdad for groceries. Wow. Like, we just didn't have a lot. So my grandparents take me to church. My mom, this is what's going on here, and I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to get by. I'm just a kid trying to do the best I know. And the only thing that I know that is for sure are my grandparents and God.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, they keep telling me about this God. And I have this desire. I mean, I want to preach about him. I want to teach about him. Like I've got my Bible. Like I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to tell people that he loves them because that's what you told me.
Yeah.
First scripture, most of us memorize is that for God so loved the world that he, gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believeth in him shall be saved. And I was like, all right, I just clung to that. Like I'm going to be saved. Granted, at the time it was because my pastor was like, I got a Hershey's bar, and if I offer to give it to you for free, are you going to take it? And I'm like, yes, I'm going to take it. And he's like, that's what salvation is. You don't have to go to hell. And I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, it's just
Nice.
it's just what it was. But I mean, it didn't change that I had it fostered a love for the Lord because my dad in his inability to be there at the particular times, the fact that my mom was not there and my stepdad was drunk and I was taking care of my sister and everything else in my life felt like it was falling apart, I didn't feel very much love. There wasn't much love. So I was able to know that there was something bigger than me, someone bigger than me that did love me. And they loved me to the point where they gave. At a point in my life where I didn't see much giving, he loved me to a point where he gave. So, my life was in high school was based a lot around on what I could or couldn't do, depending on whether my sister could do it or not. Can your sister go? No, then you can't go. That was just kind of it. I did get a bike one year for Christmas, and I was so excited. But then when I found out that my little sister couldn't go with me, it limited how often I could use the bike, so I never even rode the bike. So just, a lot there. And because we didn't have a lot in high school, there was a lot of being made fun of. I didn't have, the coolest clothes or the coolest shoes. I probably wore the same outfit multiple days in a row, didn't brush my hair. I didn't even know how to fix my hair. My mom didn't teach me these things. Like it's not that she couldn't. It was that she was busy, and when she was home, she was frustrated because everything else. So I didn't know how to do hair. I didn't know how to do makeup. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff. I got a ponytail at best. So that was not the girls didn't appreciate that, and the guys especially didn't, So it was just a really rough time of that. And I was made fun of and picked on by children and by adults, and it was crazy. And so my home life was chaotic. My mom was fighting with my stepdad when he was there, and he was passed out drunk, and she was angry. So I asked my dad to take me. Like, just take me.
Yeah.
Like, I was 14. Like, the state of Georgia says I can pick, right? I mean, I'm 14. I don't know the rules. I'm saying at 14, that's what I said. I'm like, Dad, the state of Georgia says I can pick. Like, let me come live with you. He's like, well, I want to wait till your brother's old enough. And when your brother's old enough, then we'll go before the judge because it's going to cost, money and this and that. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I had to wait another year. I felt in that moment very unloved and very unwanted by my dad because I need more.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting it. So a year goes by, and my brother turns 14 and I'm 15, and kind of getting to a place in my life where I'm making some of those decisions as a teenager that you probably shouldn't be making. So I'm starting to get interested in guys, and my mom doesn't care. But my dad, if my dad were to take custody of me, he'd probably be a little more strict on my behavior. Whereas my mom, she's like, as long as you're home in time to take care of your sister in the morning, I don't care what time you stay out. Like, so at 15 now, which are you going to choose? There's not a whole lot of 15-year-olds that would go, I'll choose the more strict way. That sounds like the way I want to go. So I didn't push the issue. It never came. My dad never mentioned it to me again, but I never pushed the issue again. I had fought for it from 9 to 14. I had asked all the time. And finally at 15, I was like, all right, whatever. So I started dating and getting into that. And I met the guy who I married him, but ended up being Wesley's dad. And we met, and I was still in high school, and he had just graduated, and we started dating. And dude, he had it all figured out. Like in my mind, in my poor little 16-year-old mind, this man had it all figured out, and here I am 16, and I got it all figured out because he has it all figured out, and it's just going to be just fine. So so we dated for a couple years while I was in high school. And so my senior year come, and he buys a house. Like he buys a house. He's got a job, and he's got a house, and he's got a car. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now this is what every girl dreams of, right? The white picket fence. It's got, it's great, right? This is going to be great. And so, at 17, I told my mom I was going to move in with him. I wanted her to sign for me to get married because although I wasn't doing the right things, I knew enough to know that I couldn't live with him and not be married to him. Yeah. Because I knew that was against the Lord's will. And I'd always had that inner turmoil. No matter what I did, I had an inner turmoil of the Lord doesn't approve. Yeah. Like I felt it. Like it just, you just knew it. So I had to fix that. So I need you to sign so I can get married. And my mom said no. So
did that have to do with how old your little sister was, or
no,
just because she didn't?
Yeah, she just didn't think it was a good idea, which she was not wrong. A 17-year-old should not be making that decision. So I moved out anyway. So I took my stuff and I left. So I jumped from one frying pan to the next unknowingly. So I got married. I finished out my senior year of high school, living with Wesley's dad. And so we were living together for the majority of my senior year while I was 17. I turned 18 the day after I turned 18. My birthday is August 20th. On August 21st, we were at the courthouse getting married because I was determined that I was not going to live in sin. Yeah. Like I'm not doing it. Like I know it's just not happening. So we got married, and I was in church that next Sunday crying out to the Lord, repenting of my sins and going, all right, Lord, I'm here. Let's do this thing. So we got in church and, started just doing what, you just do what you think is the right things. Yeah. And Wesley's dad, he has in the past had a bit of a temper, and he has a bit of a temper. He just would, I would provoke him in different manners, and he would get mad, and it would generally end in a terrible fight. So that lasted for about a year, and I got pregnant with Wesley, and had a horrible pregnancy. Oh my goodness, it was the end all of pregnancies.
You were 19 when you were okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I was almost. I found out I was pregnant with Wesley in July, and I turned 19 in August. So, my body tried to miscarry somewhere about 10 weeks. I went to the hospital and was just scared out of my mind. And the hospital, in all of their gracious, wonderful tact with words, said, you can miscarry at home just as well as you can here. So, wow. And sent me on my way. And I was like, well, all right. And I'm 19 and I don't know. I'm just like, what is. So they sent me home, said, be on bed rest till it was the weekend, Monday, when you go see your doctor. Okay. So I went in to see my doctor on Monday, and they did all the tests and, ultrasound and whatnot. And they're like, you're okay. I'm like, great. They're like, but I was like, but what? You have high blood pressure. I'm like, I'm 19 and I weigh 100 pounds. Like, why do I have high blood pressure? Well, you do. I don't know. So they put me on bed rest. So I wound up being on bed rest for the majority of my pregnancy. I had pregnancy-induced hypertension. I had gestational diabetes. Then in December of 2004, I went into the hospital I was septic. I had gotten a kidney infection to the point where they thought I was going to die.
Goodness gracious.
So I went in, and I remember I went... Again, gracious tact of a hospital. Bless their heart. They see so much. I mean, they just see so much. It's just what it is. They just lose filters along the way. And the lady says, I go into labor and delivery. I'm not in labor and delivery, but I'm pregnant. It's close enough. And the lady says, well, you're not supposed to be here. Why are you here? And I'm like, because I think I'm dying. Like, that's why. I'm like, I can't feel one side of my body. Like, there's something wrong. So they're like, well, you're not supposed to be here, but we'll treat you anyway. And so my aunt had taken me to the hospital. So they said, call your husband, let him know we're going to keep you for 23 hours. So I called him and I hung up the phone, and I don't remember anything until I woke up almost 7 days later.
Goodness gracious.
So I just managed to get a really bad kidney infection that I let go too far and tried to leave this world. But the Lord had better plans.
Yeah.
So
Indeed.
I went on and had the remainder of my pregnancy. Wesley was due on March 16th. And on Valentine's Day, they had me. I was doing. I had to go weekly for checkups because I was high risk. So I was going weekly to the ROC, the Regional Obstetric Consultants. Great people. And I went in on the 14th. They're like, your blood pressure's really bad. We're gonna have to take this baby. We need to do an amniocentesis.
The 14th of
February.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that's a full month.
Yeah. So they said, we're going to do an amniocentesis and see if his lungs are good. And I was like, all right. So I had just had my baby shower like the day or 2 days before. I mean, I had nothing. Like, I didn't have anything done. I was like, oh my goodness, we don't have a car seat. So race around and do all that. And so they called me that night and they're like, we really want to take him, but we can't. His lungs need at least 2 more weeks to be developed. And I was like, all right. They were like, strict bed rest. Like, you just it.
Yeah.
So a week later, my amazing grandparents come and get me and take me to my doctor appointment. And I'm sitting there, and the doctor comes in. He says, guess who's having a baby today? And my grandmother, she's just the cutest thing. She goes, not her.
Yeah, you had a week left, right? At least, yeah.
Yeah, she says, not her. And the doctor's like, yeah, it's her. We're doing it today. So they sent me over to the hospital, and I ended up having Wesley, and just a great kid, great baby. He was just wonderful. So we go back home, and everything is good for a little while, and then tempers start escalating again, and significant being a good word, events occurred within my marriage that I didn't even like him anymore. I didn't want to be married to him anymore. And I became very resentful and very angry. And so 5 years in or Wesley was 5, so 6 years in, I decided that I was going to go to work because I'd been a stay-at-home mom this whole time. I had done, oh my goodness, I believe wholeheartedly everybody needs to do a stint in youth ministry.
Yeah.
Like, I think it'll just change your life dramatically.
Yeah.
I had been in the church that we had been a part of. I had done youth ministry. I had done lock-ins, which again, everybody should. Everybody in ministry should have to chaperone or lead at least one youth lock-in.
Amen.
At least one. If you don't know the Lord before, you will know him when you come out.
That's the only way you're going to survive.
You will learn. To speak in tongues at a youth walk-in.
Yeah.
You may not know that's what you're doing, but by George, that's what you're doing in a closet, just praying your little heart out that you don't lose it. So I had done that. I had done vacation Bible schools. I had participated in a multitude of women's things. There's lots to be said about those things. Like, there's lots to be said about all of the programs and all the things that I was involved in. But I never got the help from the church that I needed as a woman in that situation.
Yeah.
That's part of the, protecting specific things that we'll do there. But, so I got a job, and that provided me with some freedom that I hadn't had. Now, rewind a little bit. So I didn't cut my hair. I didn't wear pants. I
She was
didn't wear
She went to
makeup.
Holiness Church.
It was Old Fashioned Church of God. But I did go to a Holiness Church. As a couple, we went to an Old Fashioned Church of God. I went to a Holiness Church. So I was there. So I got a job. And then I got some freedom and I decided to cut my hair and put on pants and put on makeup. I went off the rails.
Yeah.
So, for the record, I have makeup on, jeans, and my hair is done. So, it's dyed blonde. So, and the Lord loves me.
And she's not off the rails.
Not off the rails, but I in everybody's view, I had went off the rails, and because I had went off the rails in everybody's view, I did actually at 25. I lovingly refer to 25 and 27 as the years that I lost my mind. I hated being married. I hated the marriage that I was in. My ex-husband, Wesley's dad, he is the best dad. Hands down. Best daddy my kid could ever have. He was a terrible husband to me. He's probably a great husband to his current wife. I was a terrible wife to him the last 2 years we were married. I'm a great wife to Jerry. If he and I had ever, both of us, gotten to know the Lord the way that we should have, that relationship would have been reconciled in the Lord and would have been great. I was not interested in that. I was bitter, I was angry, and I was frustrated, and I was hurt. And I decided that I wasn't going to be in church anymore because I'm not a halfwayer.
Yeah.
I'm either all in or I'm all out.
Yeah.
You're not going to get me middle ground. So I'm either going to do this thing with the Lord and I'm going to go to church and I'm going to love the Lord and I'm going to serve the Lord, or I'm going to serve the world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do either of them with everything with the best to my best ability.
Neither one of us are 50%ers.
Yeah. We're not much for 50%.
No.
So when I quit.
Yeah.
And the Lord had given me so many opportunities. The first church we were a part of, dude, they were small and starting when we were there. And I got to experience the food pantry there, the clothes pantry there. I got to do their youth ministry. I got to lead their drama team for years. I loved it. I loved it. It was, they are to this day, they're going strong great.
Yeah.
The last church that my ex-husband and I went to before we got divorced, I don't know, but I hurt a lot of people there. And that's significant enough for me. Outside of mine and his marriage and what, I can't speak to what he did. I can speak to what I did. Yeah. And the things and the people that I broke. So I left. I just quit. I'm done. I just, I allowed the enemy to seep into my brain in such a way that he convinced me that, that this is who I was.
Yeah.
That this new alter ego that I had created by cutting my hair off short, dyeing it black. I mean, it was all out. I didn't do it halfway. Again, I went all the way. This is who you are. This wild and out crazy girl is who you are. That's oh my gosh. If you see a picture of me from that time period, you're you just look empty. I look empty. And I was. Yeah. I thought I was full, but I was empty. So I do that 2 years craziness. And my husband and I end up getting a divorce, which again, at that particular moment, I was incredibly thankful for. I was looking forward to it. I wanted to be free, right? Yeah. I was free. So I moved into a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom trailer that my dad had bought for me. And I went to work and, I started doing life. And that first church that I mentioned that I went to, the pastor's wife calls me and she's like, you got to come back. You got to come back to church. You've lost your mind.
Now, did you have custody of Wesley?
I did. Okay. Well, okay. So what we did is we did what's called true joint custody.
Okay.
And I think this is important.
Yeah.
Because we split custody with Wesley 50-50. We went straight down the middle.
Yeah.
We didn't do child support. We didn't do, I didn't, nothing. Like, you have him half the time, I have him half the time. We split expenses.
Yeah.
He was 7 years old when we got a divorce, and that's how it's been for 10 years. He is 17. He'll be 18 in February. His dad was not a good husband.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things he was good at, and there were things that he was good at. He was not a good husband. I was not a good wife. So, especially the last half, let's be fair. So but he's a good dad.
Yeah.
And I grew up with seeing my dad every other weekend.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I could not reconcile in my mind, no matter how bad it hurt to only have him half the time, could not reconcile in my mind my kid growing up with that same reality.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. There wasn't enough child support. There wasn't enough things that he could give me or me fight for to make that be okay in my mind. My young man needed his dad.
That's I have no experience with divorce, but just enough people know enough about divorce to I think appreciate what you're saying, in that most of the time, from what people understand who don't have experience with it, it's about what can I get, and hearing you talk about your experience that you went through changed your entire perspective from you to your son.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's...
Absolutely. Yeah. There are times where dads don't need to have custody of their kids. There are times where moms don't need to have custody of their kids. I do not for one second think that if both of those parents are equal and or both are good parents, I do not think for one second that one parent should have custody over the other. At a point where a child, if it involves school or sports or, something like that, and they need to go one way or the other, that's fine. But for the purposes of I want to grow up with both of my parents. I want him to have the opportunity to experience us both. And so we did. And we are approaching 18. We're 10 years into this thing. And I think I can count on one hand the number of arguments or disagreements we've had. We have been able to work together and work through everything. Wesley has an amazing stepmom. She is, she'd give that kid, anything he needed. She has been at every sporting event that she could possibly be at. Like, she's there. His dad is there. Like, it is a us and we thing, not a you and me thing with him. Yeah. It's fabulous. When Wesley was 7 or 8, 8 or 9, we went to a parent teacher conference. His dad and I went together, separate, but together. Yeah. And we're sitting there and the teachers are like, "He lives in separate houses?" We're like, "Yeah." They said we would have had no idea. He's so well adjusted. We would have had no idea he lived in separate houses. Amazing.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to kind of highlight that point, is because I, unfortunately, and especially my wife, who's a high school guidance counselor, I get to see the outcome of a lot of, I don't necessarily have a better term for this, selfish divorce
I'm going to hurt you the best I can. I'm going to hurt you the worst I possibly can.
And it hurts me to see it. And so I can't even fathom how much it's hurting the kid. And so I just really wanted to highlight that because and the teacher saw it too.
Yeah, they were like, dude, and so it's been a great relationship. We decided from day one, the day we went for divorce, Wesley would always be put first, and we have maintained that exact same thing. If it's a big punishment, if Wesley's done something big, we talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about it. Like, what does this look like? There's no secrets, no what happens at your house stays at your house. Yeah. Like, there's none of that. Like, it's, if he does something stupid at my house, I'm calling his dad and I'm like, you know what he did? It's just what it is. So anyway, so it's as far as that part has been, it's been a great experience. His dad and I had one conversation not long after we got divorced where he was picking on me pretty hard. His dad was, and I made the statement to him. I said, listen, you can't help somebody while you're looking down on them. I said, you're going to have to quit looking down on me. Yeah. Like, you're just going to have to quit. And I think that was one of the last conversations we had like that. So we lived in this little 2-bedroom, and I went to work and I was working. My grandparents, again, being just amazing who they are. They were taking care of Wesley when he was with me. They would take him to school if I needed him to. Like, they would pick him up. Just fabulous. Yeah. I cannot stress enough. And so I went to work for a little company in the town I work for, and I met a amazing young man. He was awesome. Like, he was in church. He led some of the church groups that he was a part of. He had 3 stellar kids, and he was unfortunately divorced. And so I met him, and we started dating. And I just really like this guy. Mm-hmm. And so his name was Bo, and we met, and we got married a little sooner than we had anticipated getting married. I don't know. I just if you know you're going to get married, mm-hmm. if you know you're going to get married, just get married. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's just, so that's what we did. And so we got married, and I moved in with him, and he had the exact same, very similar custody agreement with his kids, so 50-50. So we had his kids, and we had Wesley, so we had 4 kids among us, which was, it was fabulous. They were all in the same age group. Oh, okay. I had 2 that were the same age in the same classes. It was great. That was fun. You could always, dinner table conversations were grand about what was going on at school, because, you know, kids, they'll rat each other out in a heartbeat. So it was so fun. We had a great time. We had kids in softball, kids in soccer, kids in band, football, basketball, cheerleading. I think that about sums it up. I think we covered the gamut. Like, we were doing it all.
Check all the boxes.
We did, and so we wanted to go to church. We had tried a couple different churches. Bo he had a lot of Baptist theology mm-hmm. that he just couldn't reconcile with Church of God. Oh yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. Dude, listen, it is what it is. Yep. So his parents came to Covenant, or his dad and stepmom. So they invited us here. So we came to Covenant, and he would do the 9 a.m. service. It was his compromise. At the time we had a 9 and 11, and he was good with that. So he did that. And so we went to church here, took care of the kids, and then he got sick one day. He got sick, and I took him to the hospital. Bo had a kidney transplant. He had surgery when he was 12 to create a pop-off on his bladder so that he would have more room in there. And so they used part of his stomach to do that. Then when he was, I think, 18, he went into kidney failure. 17, 18, he went into kidney failure. By the time he was 27, he had to have a kidney transplant. So when he was 27, he had a kidney transplant. Great little side story. His best friend, they were in church, and they had said Bo needed a kidney transplant, and they were praying for him. And his best friend stood up and said, "It's me. I'm his match." And that is incredibly rare. And you know, everybody's like, okay, you know. So they go to Vanderbilt. Guy's a match. Wow. He's an amazing pastor. He pastors a church, I think, in like South Georgia. He's a great, great godly man. And he gives him his kidney. Like, who does that? Like, I mean, it's like here. So Bo had dealt with sickness his whole life. Yeah. But he always had to go to Vanderbilt. We couldn't be treated around here because that's where he had his kidney transplant. And they had this weird thing where if you take him to a hospital here, they're just going to bus him up there. So we just bypassed it altogether, and we'd go to Vanderbilt. So we went to Vanderbilt, and this was in March. They diagnosed him with like car crash victim syndrome. I don't know, or something that bodybuilders get. It's weird. Crush. Yeah, they said that he had that, and they were like, "Oh, he'll be fine in a couple days." It's like, that's cool. Okay, we'll take that.
Did that correspond with his lifestyle?
No.
Okay.
No, it was weird. Super weird. Yeah, it was weird. They couldn't tell us why. That's just what it was. So we were like, all right. So we went home, and then in September, it was the day after his birthday. So he would stop into the hospital and get blood work done occasionally because of his kidney transplant. Yeah. It was not abnormal for him to do that. But he could also tell, because he had dealt with it for so long, when something wasn't right. Mm-hmm. So he'd go have blood work done so they could adjust things. So he went and had blood work done, and he called me and he said, "You're going to have to come get me. I'm in kidney failure." So I ran home and I packed whatever I could find that I thought we needed, and went and picked him up from his work and took him to the hospital. And he was in like his kidney failure. He was at like his creatinine was like 17.
How long had y'all been together at this point?
Oh my goodness, you're gonna make me do math. Hang on. I don't know why I'm looking at you.
I wasn't there.
2 years. I think
Okay.
2 years. I think 2 years. I think it's right. 2 or 3 years, somewhere around in there.
I think it was 3.
3. Okay. So I think you're right. So we get up there, and so he's in kidney failure. We don't know why. The doctors are like, we don't know why. I'm like, well, find it.
Yeah.
Like, figure it out. And they were like, well, we'll do this test and we'll do that test, and it might be a couple days. And I was like, you don't understand. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know if you do. He has one kidney, and you're killing it. Like, every minute that you waste is one less opportunity that kidney is going to have to come back.
Yeah.
Get me somebody who can figure this out. So they get in there and they're like, oh, it's a blockage. We're going to have you come back and do it. This is, several hours. This is me pushing several hours later. Like, you're going to come back for us to figure out what the blockage is. I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. We're going to do it now.
Yeah.
So they said, no, we're just going to release you. I was like, okay. I said, you can do that. I said, but as soon as you do, I'm just wheeling him back around into your emergency room. So you can deal with me now or later, but you're going to deal with me. I can be a force sometimes.
Indeed.
It's okay for you
sometimes
to amen
that's
it.
needed at hospitals.
You can amen it. It's okay. So anyway, so they ended up, he had a blockage. They ended up doing what's called a F tube, which is supposed to be a temporary relief. It's never supposed to be permanent. It's never supposed to be long lasting because it can cause serious infection, and it's just a pain. So they put the F tube in, then they do the biopsy, and they called me, and he was still in surgery, and they called me, and the doctor said, we'll send it off for pathology, but based on my experience, this is cancer.
Goodness.
We were at Vanderbilt Hospital. This was a couple of hours, 2.5 hours from where we lived, and there was nobody there. I was by myself. And my blood pressure went through the roof. I got sick. Oh, goodness. To this day, I can remember where I was standing when I answered the phone. I don't know that I'll ever forget it. And so they bring him back up, and, we do this whole thing with, what's going on and so on and so forth, and just a whole different story within itself. So they said, we're going to have to get you in with an oncologist. And so they got us in with an oncologist, and she was like, we're going to have to talk to the tumor board. We don't know how to treat it. I'm like, you don't know how to treat it?
Wow.
Like, we've never seen it before, because it is gastric cancer inside his bladder. So that pop off that they had created.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
They're like, we don't know how to treat that. And I'm like, oh, good. That's going to be great. So, they, eventually they, got with the tumor board. They're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to treat it. He's going to have a chemo port. We're going to do chemo every 2 weeks for a 48-hour cycle. So you'll go home with this chemo bag, and you'll bring it back the next time you have chemo. You'll spend like 8 hours on a Friday, and so on and so forth. I'm like, all right, that's what we'll do. So in October, he started chemo, and we did October, November, December, January, February, March. We did chemo. Throughout that time, he got sepsis twice. The nephrostomy tube that was in his stomach that was bypassing his bladder because it couldn't do what it was supposed to, it got infected. It's not made for that. It's just not. Yeah. It's a temporary solution. So we were in the hospital a couple different times for sepsis, and he was in critical condition one of those times. It was really scary. So, we have, the church praying for us. Of course we're praying. Faith hits different.
Yeah.
On something like that.
Yeah.
Faith hits different. So, we go through the chemo, and they said, he's done great. We're going to do surgery. We can take it out. That's amazing. Yeah. They're like, let's do that. So in March, they did the surgery. 13 hours.
Ooh,
was
goodness.
Forever long. I was again at the hospital by myself. I made some amazing friends. So here's the thing. there's always a thing, right? So here's the thing. I spent, I don't know, countless hours at Vanderbilt Hospital. I couldn't quantify it.
Yeah.
Jerry can quantify his mom's days that she was in the hospital. I can't quantify it. I'd lost count somewhere
just
along the ways. Yeah, there's just along the ways I lost count. But I can remember so many faces of people that I prayed for.
Wow. Yeah.
There were so many opportunities for the Lord to move in people's lives, right? Mm-hmm. So I had this big situation and my husband is sick and my husband is not well. But I have this opportunity to be in a space and time that I may not have ever had the opportunity to be in otherwise. Yeah. So I'm going to take my focus off of this for right now, and I'm going to focus it on these people that you must love.
Yeah.
Because you've placed me here.
That perspective shift is massive.
It's ridiculous. Yes. It changes everything. It changes everything when it becomes less about me and more about the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, like there was this lady and her husband was having heart surgery and we were doing laundry together, and to get to pray with her and pray for her. And then the family that was there when Bo had his surgery, the mother was having surgery for pancreatic cancer, and we got to pray together. We got to share stories together about the Lord and what the Lord was going to do in her mom's life and what the Lord was going to do in my husband's life.
Yeah.
I got to meet people in the chapel and pray with them. I mean,
it's amazing. Not only the perspective shift, but like you said, faith hits different. That's a beautiful way of wrapping up the idea that certain moments in life, you're primed for God to move. And you can either take advantage of those moments or you can be focused on something else that keeps you from taking advantage of those moments.
Yeah.
And whenever you come across those moments and you pay attention to those moments, you're sowing seeds that have no choice but to grow.
Yeah.
Like you can sow seeds all your life.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can sow seeds that are going to grow no matter what. Like and that's just a beautiful, beautiful perspective to have during something like that.
Yeah. We just, it was just the only option because so when Bo got sick, I was working for an amazing bank. They were amazing. He was working for an amazing company. But there were still issues and hurdles, and there were children, and there were things, and there were jobs, and the Lord just, dude, he was so faithful. You can say, I could say, poor me, we were going through this. Or I can say, look what my God was doing. Mm-hmm. The faith, look what my God was doing. He gave us jobs. My insurance never faltered because they kept my job for me. We needed insurance. Yeah. His job never missed a paycheck. My job never missed a paycheck. I don't know at the days of work. They didn't even question me.
Wow.
And this job, when it wasn't the one that I got it during the time Bo and I were married, but before he was sick, and I had left one job, and when we were looking at the pros and cons and we're praying over it, like, what's the right decision? What's the right decision? Mathematically, financially, this one didn't make the most sense.
Yeah.
At that time, it didn't. But it just felt like the right decision for my family. And that was where we went. And the other place, as good as they were, I don't know that they could have ever been able to provide for me what this place could give me.
Yeah.
So it's provision of the Lord. Yeah. It's provision of the Lord. He never said I wouldn't go through anything. Matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. We will go through things.
Oh yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's when you go through the river, you will not be overtaken. Yeah. When you go through the fire, you won't be burned up. So the provision and what the Lord did.
Yeah.
My entire life at various points was through fires. There's lack, there's fear, there's shame, there's guilt, there's things that happen to me that are unspeakable things. But my God always provided a way.
Yeah.
He always provided, and he always loved me. He always loved me. Even though if I were to tell you, and I'll be more than happy to tell, there's so much of this to tell in a personal one-on-one or small group setting of some of those things.
Yeah.
to hear that and to say, wow. And through that, you're still clinging to your God? Yeah, because I know my God.
Yeah, because it built, like you said, when you go through the fire, when, we understand these things, but I don't think people always understand the importance of one small word there is when.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have the perspective of if.
Yeah.
And when you have the perspective of if, things look a lot different from when you have the perspective of when.
Yeah.
And then from that small framework comes all of the things you're talking about, and so that's a beautiful
faith
thing. Yeah.
Like it's faith. It's faith. Like we can't, if I never went through anything, then I would never have the opportunity to build faith. I would never have the opportunity to see my God in these ways.
Yeah.
These are ways that you're never going to have an opportunity to see the Lord in heaven. Yeah. So these are ways that I can see him on earth that I'm never going to have that opportunity to see him in heaven. So I'm going to rejoice and be thankful. Yeah. And I'm going to look for ways that I can praise my God in them.
Yeah.
So we have our surgery, and they said he's good. They gave him a clean bill of health, told him he could eat sushi. I mean, it's a big deal. We're good. And so they removed the nephrostomy tube. They gave him an ostomy. Just amazing. And I say this because the Lord's physical provision in the supernatural that we sometimes just don't realize. It's a small thing in my life, but it was important. I can't stand the sight of blood. It grosses me out. I can't stand to touch things. Like if you have a BB in your finger and you're like, come touch it. I'm like, no, that's disgusting. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. You get a bloody nose, don't call me. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. And so Bo literally could not change his ostomy. And it's gross. All right, it's gross. I did it. His neph tube, I did it.
Yeah.
Deaccessing his chemo port, I did it. It's just some sort of supernatural grace that the Lord gave me that I wasn't throwing up every time because I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. It grosses me out. It is. You can't. If you ask me,
think of that. And I've got this little thing on my elbow where I fell down the stairs. And she will not touch it. I'm like, wait a minute. Lord, what are we doing here right now? What is happening?
I can't do it. It's going to take the Lord because that's the only way I can do it. I couldn't do it otherwise.
It feels really cool.
They sent us home with this chemo port. All right. They don't tell you a whole lot about it other than you're going to have to take the needle out of his chest. I'm going to have to do what? Wait a minute. So the first day we come home and I've got all my supplies spread out on the bed and I'm looking at him and he's like, it's okay. I'm like, no, it isn't. I want to take a needle out of your chest. I don't think this is okay. I did it. And then we had a chemo leak where chemo was leaking everywhere, nightmare, all of those things. So hospital says he's good, sends him on our way. We're ready for all of those things that we said we were going to do. We're going to buy a camper now. We're going to do all of these things. And so we come home and that was in March. April rocks on, pretty normal. Still has some chemo side effects, but nothing too bad. In May, we went back for a PET scan. And when we went back for the PET scan, they said, that they thought that they were going to have to do some more chemo and whatnot, but it wasn't anything serious. By the end of May, he had called me and said, I'm having trouble breathing. That's not normal. My back's hurting. That's not normal. By June, he can't eat.
Goodness.
He just can't eat. He's just nothing. No, he just can't eat. So we go back to the hospital in June. It was around Father's Day. It was just before Father's Day. I had taken him back in a 2-week span. We had been at the hospital twice because the first time that wasn't good enough. So we went back the next time. And they were trying to do an NG tube, trying to get him nutrition. He had lost a ton of weight. He was sick. So they started doing all of these tests and so we were there for about 2 weeks for that stint. It was around Father's Day. He spent Father's Day that year in the hospital. And they come and told us that the cancer had metastasized. It was all over his body. Yeah. So he had clean margins in March and we were good. They had taken some lymph nodes out, but they were confident that everything was good. And it wasn't. So It's in his lungs. It's all over his stomach. That's why he couldn't eat. There's a lining in between. So like you've got your lung, inner lining, the breathing part of your lung that has the air. The lining of his was just, it was fluid filled, and it was just cancer cells all the way around. So, so I asked him, said, they come and told us that. And again, nobody makes these trips with you, right? Nobody jumps in the car and like goes to Vanderbilt with you. So one time we were there, somebody brought us some food, and my work brought some stuff up one time, but we were alone. And so, well, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to go to the Biltmore, and I want a dog. And I just love this story. I tell it all the time, but he couldn't go to Biltmore because he was on too much oxygen. So I said, well, what kind of dog do you want? He said, I don't know. I said, well, what about a Boston Terrier? He said, no, those are too big. I said, okay, well, what about French Bulldog? Because to me, they look like a Boston Terrier. He liked Boston Terriers. Well, seems to make sense. He's like, no, they're ugly. Like, what kind of dog do you want? A Yorkie. I'm like, you want
This is how you know things are not okay.
When you choose a Yorkie?
When you choose a Yorkie.
So he wanted a Yorkie. So I said, okay. So I started making all these phone calls trying to find a Yorkie. Okay, so I'm at Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. I live at the time in Trenton, Georgia, and I'm trying to figure out how going to find a Yorkie, two, find a Yorkie that we can physically acquire in some manner, you know. And I got to be able to pay for this thing. So find this lady in Marietta, Georgia, I believe. And she said, I got one left. And this is what our God does. Okay, this is what our God does. She says, coincidentally, I hate that word. It's just what it is. I'm going to be driving through Chattanooga, Tennessee this weekend to go see my daughter in Knoxville. Like, of course you are. Why wouldn't you be? That's how you love us, Lord. You know, I'm just like, oh my goodness, you know. So we get the dog. Some of Bo's family went and got the dog, picked the dog up, held the dog until we were able to come home from the hospital. So the hospital said, you know, he's on high flow oxygen. You know, I don't know about taking him home, but if we'll get him home if we can. He's going to have to go home in an ambulance to go home. And I was like, well, I want him at home. Yeah. And they said, well, you know, you're going to have to take him home on hospice. And I said, well, no, I'm not. And they said, yeah, you are. I was like, what do you mean I want to take him home on hospice? I said, because my faith said that he was going to live. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not taking him home on hospice. And the lady said, well, if you want to take him home, that's how you're going to take him home. I'm like, okay, you win. Pulled a trump card on me. Yeah. I said, fine. I said, I will take him home. I said, but you have to understand that this is not, that I'm taking him home on this because you're telling me that's the only way I can do it. Because it's not because I believe he's not going to live. She's like, fine. Yeah. And they're like, if you want to live in denial, that's fine with them. They don't care. So they said they'd have an ambulance for me. This was on Friday. They said they'd have one for me on Saturday. And I said, okay. So and I did call his family. They did say have his family come have everybody come because they had told us that if there's breathing got any worse, because he was on as high as oxygen. I mean, you couldn't go any higher than what the hospital offered them. Then he was going to have to go on a ventilator. And if he went on a ventilator, then he would probably never speak or anything again. So to give everybody that opportunity, so everybody come up. And so they said Saturday he'll go home. It's okay. So Saturday morning comes and they're like, oh, well, I'm sorry. We don't have an ambulance. We can't let him go home. They don't have an ambulance today. I said, okay, but it'll be tomorrow. It's okay. They said, if he makes it through the night without going on a ventilator, he can go home. Like, he ain't going on a ventilator. Like, it's just not happening. So they came in the next morning and the doctor said, I'm sorry. They have a skeleton crew today. They can't spare anybody. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, his time is, you know, he's not doing well and you guys want to keep him here. And that's just because you want to put him on a ventilator. Yeah. So I said, well, if I get an ambulance, can he go home? And that doctor's like, ma'am, miss, you know, you're not. I was like, if I get an ambulance, can he go home? She's like, well, I mean, yeah, but you're not going to get an ambulance. I mean, that's, you know, I was like, all right. So, got everything together. I started making phone calls, called every person I could think of. Our covenant people will appreciate that Bob Chelly offered to put him on his flatbed truck and bring him home. So I'll never forget it. It was pretty great. So by like 2:00 that afternoon, I had an ambulance service.
Wow.
And so I am barefoot 90% of the time. I don't like shoes.
Let the record show she has her feet in the air with her socks on.
I do. I just don't like shoes. I take off running through the hospital. I'm like, I need that doctor. And they're like, oh, no, we'll get you a nurse. I was like, no, I need that doctor. I need you to bring me that doctor. So they bring me the doctor in, and I looked at her and I said, I have an ambulance. I said, and that's what my God can do. I said, so if you think that I'm taking him home to die, you're wrong. Because my God has already given me an ambulance to take him home, in which you said he wouldn't get, So I'm like, I had sticky notes. Like, you weren't even allowed to say the word death in his room.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't even allowed to say it. Like, it was not, like, it's just not happening. So we come home, and I mean, he got better for like 2 days. I was like, Jesus, you are amazing. And so he, unfortunately, on July the 5th, he passed away. He, I had the privilege of holding him when he stopped breathing, and it was, to say it was one of the hardest days of my life would probably still be an understatement.
Oh, yeah.
I fought and contended for his life and his health for so long. I had absolute belief that he was going to live. So we, I got with his family, planned a funeral, had his funeral, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do as far as church was concerned. I just didn't know. I knew I was going to go. I wasn't giving up on the Lord. I'd already done that once, so that didn't turn out real good for me. So I'm not going to do that. I just don't know what to do. And Bob Chelly kept saying to me, just don't disconnect. Mm-hmm. Don't disconnect. Just don't disconnect. I mean, like, it was all the time. It was just constant. Like, so don't disconnect. Like, if something happens and you haven't quite gotten it all figured out yet, just don't disconnect. Don't pull away.
That's good.
Don't pull away. Press in and don't pull away. Even if you don't have it all figured out. Because I wasn't sure about everything right then.
Yeah, I can't imagine a harder reconciliation to have with your faith and your situation.
Yeah. I mean, I believed, right? I mean, I believed, and it was just, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Yeah. And so I encourage anyone that feels that way, that feels like something didn't quite go the way you expected. Mm-hmm. Don't disconnect from God and don't disconnect from people.
That's huge. Yeah.
It just don't. So I came to church one Sunday morning, and they were singing the song, and the lyrics say, "You're never going to let me down." And I stood at the altar, and I mean, just squalling, because all I could think was, you let me down.
Goodness, yeah.
Like, you let me down. Like, I believed and you let me down.
That's anyone's natural.
Like, I'm like, what is wrong? And so we left, and Wesley says, Mom, I don't know why. I don't know why. Why did Bo have to die? Why did pastor's mom live and Bo die? Because it had just so happened that the pastor had given a testimony of, I believe it was his mom or somebody had been healed of cancer. And Wesley is like, what is...
How old is he at this point?
12.
Okay.
And he's like, why did Bo not get healed of cancer? Yeah. I was like, oh, Lord Jesus, I don't have this answer. Like, you like, as a mom, you want to give your kid all the answers, and you don't have them. And so one of the things that I am supremely good at is admitting when I don't have the answers. So I gave him the best answer I had, which is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I do know is that God has a much bigger plan and things that go far beyond what I can understand.
Yeah.
I play a very small role. And I only see, it's like this entire big puzzle, and I can only see a small portion of it. And the portion that I even can see has pieces missing that the Lord hasn't quite put into place yet. Because honestly, if he did, I'd probably run the other way, because things tend to freak me out sometimes. So, I mean, if he told me I was going to marry this guy, I'd be
let the record show she's pointing to Jerry Lee.
true.
But I mean,
like the Lord, like I just, so I had to find a place where I did not run God through the court of my mind. Where I didn't try God's actions and choices based off of what my human thoughts and it should be, right? He is God. I am not. He is God. I am not.
That perspective is unfathomably hard to have, but the only one that I think gives you the right way forward.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. God doesn't. And so this is what, I wrote not long after Bo passed away. I was like, oh, God doesn't owe me an explanation. Mm-hmm. He doesn't owe me anything. He gave me everything already. Yeah. He doesn't owe me anything else. I don't have to know why. Not only do I not have to know why Bo didn't live, but now it also doesn't change whether I pray for anybody else to live. So that didn't happen. Okay. The next person that I'm praying for that the doctors say isn't going to live doesn't change how I pray for them. It doesn't change that I pray for them to be healed. It doesn't change that I pray for the Lord to move in their life. It doesn't change that. It just means that I didn't see what I thought I was going to see here.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We have to find a place where we're okay with that. We have to find a place where we're okay with the mysteries of God and the things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something that we don't get and we don't understand.
Yeah, and it's that puzzle, like the understanding that we don't see the big picture is honestly, from my experience, the only way to properly deal with the fact that there will be unknowns. And there's a big difference between saying I don't know to someone and saying I don't know but God.
Yeah.
Like that's a massive difference.
Yeah, you can say, because you can look at it and you can go, well, how do you know? Like if he didn't live, how do you know? I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you all the different ways he moved in my life during that time.
Yeah.
Like I know he was there and I know he's real because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. The testimony of the Lord throughout the entire process shows me that he is there.
Yeah.
It shows me that he never left me. It shows me that I was never alone, and it shows me that he cares. Doesn't mean he doesn't care. I just didn't see the result I was expecting. There's an element of everybody will be here until they've served the purpose that God has called them here to do.
Yeah. Whether
I like it or not. My granddaddy passed away in 2014, right? 2015. His mom passed away the same year, so I have to look to him. I'm terrible with times, dates, and years, and if I tell you yesterday or I tell you 6 months ago, they could be the same. Or they could be 2 years ago. Like, there's no relevance for time in my mind.
I'm here to help with that.
I'm like, it happened a few minutes ago, and Jerry's like, yeah, like 6 weeks ago. I'm like, whatever. So my granddaddy passed away, and I mean, my granddaddy was, as I said, my grandparents were so very important in my life, and I didn't understand it, and I still don't. I still don't. All I know is that my God is good and my God is in control, and my what I have went through, my reality, my circumstances do not change my God. Mm-hmm. My circumstances, what I'm seeing as reality, changes who I am in God. It does not change my God.
Yeah.
My God is not changeable. My God is the same, and he is good, and his word says he is good. You can bank on it.
Amen.
It just is what it is. There's no, you could take everything in my life and line it up and go, but, and I'm like, but nothing. Mm-hmm. Because I can show you where my God was. You're only trying to show me where you think my God wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
But I can show you where my God was.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me. Mm-hmm. So I went through like, okay, Lord. Okay, what's next, Lord?
Yeah.
The Sunday I asked, what's next, Lord? I met Jerry. I was like, you can't possibly be serious. So
he loved you enough to give you me.
So I met Jerry.
And that's some love right there, dude.
Yeah. So I met Jerry, and we we were not going to get married. We were not going to even talk about it. We weren't going to be friends. We were only going to be friends. We weren't doing anything else. And so my grandmother's dog died. One of Wesley's best friends' grandparents passed away. I was working. I had this really just chaotic day. And Jerry is like, well, why don't you let me help you? And I was like, no, because Wesley doesn't know you really that well. And this and that and the other thing, excuses. And so that night I was talking to my mom and I was telling her about my day. And I was like, yeah, and Jerry offered to help. And Wesley from the back seat, top row, goes, why didn't you let him? I could help him get out of your friend zone. I was like, oh.
Dang, she's slow. She's really smart, but she's slow.
So what that did for me was that opened up an opportunity for me to have a conversation with my kid about.
So he already had been.
But I didn't know.
I gotcha.
I wanted to know how his heart was.
Yeah.
He loved Bo.
Yeah.
Like, he loved Bo. They were close. He lost his grandfather, then he lost Bo.
Yeah.
Not too far apart, and both of those men were very important to him. I needed to make sure his heart was okay. So obviously it was okay. So we had that conversation, and Jerry and I plan on getting married, and we're going to get married, and we're like, oh, why don't we just get married now? Because that's the way we do things. We can be. I'm not great at spontaneous unless it's getting married, apparently. One of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. And it's like, let's be spontaneous about that. So we got...
I'm spontaneous about everything.
Yeah, he is spontaneous about everything.
If there's a plan to it, I'm out.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm kind of that way
It's true,
too.
but I did hear a really good devotional about that this morning that was really good. And I'll say this because I think it's really good. Your amount of influence will be determined by the amount of time that you give. So was talking about how careful and how intentional we are about answering our phones and being there for people. That our amount of influence that we have on people will be determined by how much time we're willing to give them. And I was like, there are people that will call us that we won't answer the phone for because we just don't want to deal with them. We don't want to deal with whatever they have to say or whatever. They're not worth our time. But we will show them love by showing them they're worth our time. Anyway, so I'm not spontaneous.
No, that's good.
Hey, when you sent that, I was thinking about my time with the Lord.
Totally fine. You can, so however the Lord shapes it to you. That's totally cool.
Yeah, in my brain, it went like before you finished what you were saying. I have this thing about whenever I'm with somebody, I won't even look at anything.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And so, I practice as much patience as I can, but sometimes I want to speak out whenever I'm with somebody and all they're doing is talking to somebody else.
You're like,
so I'm
hello.
like, I'm giving you my time.
Yeah,
Which is the most important thing that you can't get. You'll never get back. That's the one thing that's the most. It's the one thing you can never replace. So, so spontaneous. We got married, and everybody thought I was crazy. Honestly, maybe I was. I mean, I'm not going to speak to that right at this particular moment in time. Maybe in a separate podcast when Jerry's not going to be listening. So, because we all know he doesn't listen to podcasts anyway. So we got married, and I moved into his house, and he had one TV, and I brought 7. It was great. Like he had.
I'm like, what do you need all those things for?
I loved video
We got one
games.
room where there's TV that's going to be.
Wait, what? She loved video games, and you're just like, no.
I'm a caveman, dude.
Yeah, I know. We
have television in one room.
He does play Zelda with me, though.
So I shouldn't even get into this. Which Zelda?
Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
Here's how we
I
play
love
Zelda.
all Zelda, but I love Breath of the Wild.
I'm working my way through Ocarina of Time on my gaming Twitch thing right now.
She does the controller because I don't know anything about that, and I do the map,
Yeah,
which I do know
Okay.
something about.
yeah, he does help me with the map. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great time.
So we can kill Zelda in like 20 minutes if we want to.
It's great. It's so funny. So I bring all these gaming equipments and TVs and couches and Christmas decorations, and he's like, what are you doing?
We have more televisions than we have rooms.
Yeah,
and I grew up in my
the
house.
same way.
There was a television in every room, and if you like, my parents when they took a bath or went to the bathroom had to have the TV on.
Yeah.
In the kitchen, the TV was on like everywhere, and I'm like 0.
Yeah, so like I was like, well, what am I gonna do? So I walked in and like the bedroom. I'm like, where am I gonna put the TV? He's like, you're not. I'm like, what? He's like, we don't have a TV in the bedroom. I'm like, who doesn't have a TV in the bedroom? So guess what? I don't have it.
I am kind of on board with that one. But I was the very same way, and then we sold our house, and I was like, what am I going to do with these? Oh, yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's full of, our youth room is full of my old DVDs.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, it was.
We gave most of them away.
Yeah, so it's been a great thing. So we got married, and I was so I've been in church, for a long time, and I've known the Lord for a long time. I mean, I got saved when I was 9. I did Sunday school until I was 16. From 16 to 17, I taught Sunday school as an assistant. When I was 18 years old, I mean, I was full-fledged, like, youth pastor, drama team leader. Like, I'm in. You got me. Like, I've done it. The only role I have not held in a church is lead pastor in some capacity. Like, it's great. I love it. I love it. But there were still some things in me that hadn't quite made their way to dealt. So I met Jerry, who is the king of let's deal with that. Let me see if I can bring all that out within you in 6 months and see how that feels.
I'll help you kill it.
Yeah.
One way or another. Yeah.
So we got married, and in March of 2018. So we started going through some stuff, and it was stuff that, my insecurities were being tested. So like I was really being pushed and stretched in ways that I didn't know I could be stretched and pushed in. And so I was like, well, Lord, I'm going to need your help with this one. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to have you. So the Lord started dealing with my heart, and it started dealing with my heart with how I related to my husband. And how I saw myself and how I saw him, and how everything that he did was not a reflection of my value or my worth. So whatever he did, it didn't, that wasn't what communicated my value and my worth.
Yeah.
My value and my worth has to be in the Lord.
Yeah.
That way he can't shake it.
Yeah.
That way you can't shake it. That way the church can't shake it. That way nobody can shake my value or worth, so that I know who I am. And no matter what the enemy tries to throw at me, whether it be through him or whether it be through somebody else, that my God still holds, that my God still stays on the throne, that my value isn't shaken, that my identity isn't shaken. And the Lord didn't put it to the test. The world put it to the test in March. And Jerry asked me one day, he said, I was sitting in the parking lot at work, and he said, what are you going to do? Or what are we going to do? And I said, I'm going to come home. I said, we're going to go to dinner with your dad, and it's going to be okay. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And that's exactly what we did. Yep. And we continued on that path, and I continued to learn from the Lord, and I continued to learn who I was in the Lord, and I continued to learn about myself as a daughter and myself as a daughter of the Lord, and that I had value and I had worth, and that Jesus didn't die because I was so bad. Jesus died for me because he loved me so much. Yeah. It wasn't for my bad, although he had to die for the bad. It says that he died because he loved. Yeah. For God so loved the world. Yeah. So I'm clinging to the love of the Lord again.
That's good.
So we got married, and we're doing that. So then in 2019 we had that. In 2020 we had the tornadoes and COVID, which was ridiculous. I had oh my God, everybody knows the COVID tornado year.
So busy. Yeah, it was unbelievable, dude.
We worked so much, and then the tornadoes hit. They hit the office that I was working at, and so that shut that office down. We were working remotely. It just got chaotic. It was
gross
chaos.
Understatement.
So ended up changing jobs, and then in December of 2020, his dad was diagnosed with dementia. And I said, well, we're going to have to move your dad in with us. So he was diagnosed with dementia, and we had already knew this was kind of coming. We had this conversation multiple times where his medication was out of whack. I mean, all sorts of things.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, he had Parkinson's, and so we're like, well, we're gonna have to find a house. His dad finally got on board, but then when reality, he wasn't on board. So started looking for houses, and so in March, his dad had a heart issue that caused him to be in the hospital and have to have heart surgery. Jerry calls his dad's doctor, and he's talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, he's just he's got to have supervision. And Jerry's like, what do you mean supervision? Like for the next 2 weeks?
This is on Wednesday. He's getting out of the hospital. Like he's coming home.
Yeah, and Jerry's leaving for Honduras on Friday.
For 10 days.
So the doctor's like, no, I mean like never. Like he has to have supervision. Like he's he needs to live with you. He can't drive anymore.
He's incompetent. Yeah. He can't handle any of his finances. He can't be at home alone.
We're like wait,
nothing.
What? Jerry calls me. He's like, Heather, oh my gosh. I'm like, he's on a mower. No, you were at the hospital.
No, I was at the hospital.
You were at the hospital.
So I stepped out of the room.
It went exponentially terrible.
Thermonuclear kind of deal.
So you have a 75-year-old man.
Yeah.
He's been on his own since he was like 14. And you tell him you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And all these lit host of bad habits that you can't continue to do in our home, even a little.
Oh my goodness. Chaos. So we brought him home to our house. And
I left for Honduras.
Jerry goes to Honduras. Leaves me with his angry dad. Oh, he was so angry. Oh, he was so mad. And so I cried in my bathroom day after day after day. I sat on the floor and cried. It was a horrible 10 days. He comes back. It's still not any better. So his dad's living with us. We have at the time we had a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house, and we have a teenager.
Yeah, just one.
And me
shower.
And Jerry, and it's all of us, and it's trying to figure this thing out. And his dad won't fully move in. So I took in March when we found out he was living with us. I took leave from my job. Told him that I would work contract. I would work from home, do what I do, just do it from home. If they were good with that, if not, I'm sorry. This is what it is. This is my family, and this is what I'm doing. His job pays the bills. My job is just extra. He can't quit. Like he has to work. Like there's no, we can figure mine out. So, so my job was great, and like, yeah, you can do that. So, I'm driving every morning 1 million miles to take his dad to take a bath because he won't take a bath at our house. Like we go through this whole process. So he has some neurocognitive testing done, and the neurocognitive guy was like, yeah, he still can't live by himself. Like it's just, this is the final order. Like it is what it is.
Yeah. Went to a neuropsychologist. He was a neuropsychologist, right? They did a 3-hour cognitive test or 4 something.
Yeah. So he couldn't live on his own. So we had to find a house. Now, you're a realtor. Pretend you're a realtor with me, all right? I'm your person, and I come to you and I say, this is what I need, Mr. Realtor. In last year's market, in 2021's market, the very height of it, and between March and May, I need 2 master bedrooms. I need a fireplace, preferably real logs. I need at least a 3-car garage. I need 2 living spaces, like 2 living rooms. I need
at least 3 bedrooms.
At least, I think I said that. At least 3 bedrooms, the 2 living spaces, no stairs for the main living area. Can't have stairs. Going into the house, it's got to be low. We've got somebody with Parkinson's. And it needs to be in Ringgold, preferably 1.5 miles from Morris Estates where his brother lives. And I need it to be within this specific budget.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah, I was like, what?
So about the 5th realtor.
Yeah.
Like people didn't want to deal with us. They were like, y'all, your list is ridiculous. And they need to be able to make fast sales, and we're going to pray over everything. So we're not going to be able to be your person that's going to put in an offer the day we look at the house.
Yeah.
So we looked at a few, and the one that we're in now, we went and looked at, and we're like, this is perfect. And his dad gets out of the car. His dad looks at it and he says, it don't have a porch. It's ugly.
There's no porch. It's terrible. Who builds a house and doesn't put a porch on it?
So we were like, okay. So we just kind of bowed out of that when we walked out. And then 2 weeks later, we're looking at a few other houses. And Jerry, about 2 weeks later, says to me, he's like, Heather, we really missed it on that house in Daly Hills. We should have put in an offer.
Which is where I wanted to live since I was in high school.
And I was like, yeah, because I mean, I'm losing it. Like at this point, I'm like, this is a lot. So he's like, yeah, or I was like, yeah, I know. And I kid you not, within just a couple of days, our realtor texted and says that house in Daly Hills, it fell through. I was like, we're buying the house. Like, that's just what it is. So we go and we sit down with the realtor and we walk in, and I guess we noticed the first time around, but we didn't notice, like all the walls are painted my favorite colors. Like if I were to paint a house and I were brave enough to put this on the wall, it's what I would do. And so his dad comes and lives with us, or we get everything moved in, which is a great story to share. If you ever want to hear it, it's really is a great story. So just ask. But we move him in, and he gets worse. He ends up with back problems, ends up having to have back surgery. He starts falling. He has back surgery. His doctor has said it wasn't a good idea because he's already had dementia. He literally had one cognitive day after his back surgery. One cognitive day.
December the 1st.
Outside of that, he never came back after the anesthesia. But what we found was he was having to use a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And something we hadn't even considered in a house was getting him in and out of a wheelchair, him rolling down the hallway. And everything was perfect.
Yeah, the doorways are big.
It was just like the Lord. The Lord just kept going, it's okay. And he just kept handing out things. It's the God of provision that you don't even know you need. It's those things but we're so blind sometimes. Yeah. We're so blind, and we get so wrapped up in our circumstances or our this or our that we don't even see what God has done. We're so bound up by, oh my goodness, Jerry's dad's so sick and he's causing me this and he's causing me that we don't see all of the greatness of the Lord. Of like, oh my goodness, look what you did. Like, we have this and we have that and we're able to do this and we're able to do that because you saw before we did. Yeah. It's great. So his dad passed away, unfortunately, last December. And the entire time that his dad lived with us, I think we snuck away 3 times to go out to eat. Maybe.
There was one night, it was like teenagers sneaking out of the house. Like legitimately, like we did. I don't even think that we went and ate. We just went and rode around or something. Maybe went and got a snack or something, but we didn't eat together outside.
We couldn't be left alone.
We didn't eat together alone for 9 months.
I don't know if you've priced care for that type of thing. It is expensive. Yeah. And then finding the people last year to do it was hard. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So again, that test of a marriage and test of like, are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? Like, are we going to do this? Are we going to keep God first? Are we going to continue to press into this thing even when everything on the outside looks like you shouldn't be pressing into this thing because it's falling apart?
Yeah.
But we just kept pressing in. And so, his dad passed away, and so his dad passed away in December, and we had this life insurance thing in January where they're going to give us new life insurance, and they come and they do this exam, and they weighed me, and I get on the scale, and I was like, oh, what is that number? I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm like, Jerry, why didn't you tell me I got fat? Jerry's like, this is my husband. And all of you women who look at him and you're like, he's so amazing. He's perfect. He looks at me and says, well, I thought you had noticed your pants were fitting different.
I mean, how do you not notice your pants are fit different, dude? I mean, you put the things on, right?
That's what he says to me. I'm like, oh, that's what we're doing now.
Like, those are your pants. You're putting your pants on. Do you not notice that the belt is like not the same place it was like 3 months ago?
He has that
Are you missing that?
He has that hospital tact. You know, like that's just
radical honesty.
Yeah, that's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just confused.
So I cried all day. And I was like, oh my gosh, So he's like, Heather, just get it under control. You've done it before. You can do it again. Because when Bo was in the hospital, I was living off Reese's Cups and Dr. Peppers, and I gained a ton of weight, and I had lost it. So he's like, just get it together, Heather. I was like, all right, I'll get it together.
And I'll help.
And he did say he'd help. Yeah, of course. Always willing to help. So, I started working out again and exercising, and I was cut out my food like I should. And I mean, I just kept gaining weight. I mean, it just kept going up. I went to the doctor and they're like, it must be your hormones. They were like testing this and testing that. And they're like, oh, we don't see, it must be what you're eating. So Jerry goes with me, and Jerry looks at the guy and he's like, I'm with her. Like she's literally doing all she can do, and she looks 4 months pregnant. Like, what is wrong with her?
Like, dude, I've trained people for bodybuilding shows. Like, I know that this is not what she's eating.
Like, yeah. I mean, I was doing everything right. So by middle of summer, I'm like, I'm miserable. I mean, like, my body is bad. I'm not sleeping well. I'm sleeping well. I'm sleeping all the time. I'm like, nothing feels right. Things are wrong. So in May, I went to the doctor. I went to the gynecologist, and I was like, something's wrong with me. And she's like, okay, well, so I tell her all my symptoms, right? And she does a pap smear, and she's like, no, you're fine. I think you just need pelvic floor therapy, but I think you're fine. I'm like, okay. So I go back home. I'm like, Jerry, they say I'm fine. I must just need to work out more. He's like, okay. I mean, we've done all the things, you know?
Yeah.
So in August, I got to where I couldn't go to the bathroom. Like I physically, like to urinate was just awful. It was awful. And I'm calling him and I'm like, something is wrong. And we were discussing what we were going to do. Like, you know, I've been to the doctor. They're not doing anything. We were like, well, do we just go to the hospital? Like, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
And so we had some evangelist friends of ours come stay the night.
Yeah.
And I was not doing well, but we made it through that. And then on August 28th, I got up that morning. It was a Sunday. And I said, you're going to take me to the hospital. I can't go to the bathroom. So he takes me over to the hospital. Precious people.
They were amazing.
And they did all the things. And they're like, well, we're going to do a bladder scan. They tried to cath me and they couldn't get anything out. So then they did a bladder scan. She's like, girl, your bladder's full. I'm like, I know. I know. So they took me for a CT. And I get back. We're in there and we're just waiting on the results. And the doctor comes in and he pulls up a chair and he says, I think I know what's wrong with you. And it's going to sound alarming. And it is. You have a mass. And they think it's cancer. The radiologist said it was sarcoma. So he said, I've got to call into a surgeon. I'll be back. I don't know if we're going to have to keep you. You know, we don't know yet because I couldn't go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I could in small amounts, but they were concerned about the pressure on my kidneys. So they could tell from the CT that my bladder was wrapped around my right hip.
Oof.
That's what was causing those issues. So I'm like, I'm sitting there and Jerry, I'm like, sarcoma. And they're talking about it, that it was about the size of a grapefruit at that point.
Yeah, they thought it was, yeah.
Goodness gracious.
And they weren't sure because of all of the distortion in my pelvis where it was. They just knew that it was, they thought it might be coming off of my ovary or off of my off of my uterus. But they weren't sure. But they thought it was about that big. Okay, so.
That's about the size.
Yeah, softball size.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. So, this is scary.
Yeah.
This is scary. And so I'm like, of course, I'm sitting there. At first, I'm like, oh, dear, Then I look over at Jerry. I'm like, oh, I know what it's like to be that spouse. Like, I know what it's like to be sitting there. So then I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? So the doctor comes back in. He said, I've got a surgeon. He's giving you his personal cell phone number. He's going to see you first thing Tuesday morning. He thinks he can get this out on Friday. By looking at the scans, he's not convinced it's cancer. I was like, awesome. We still don't know, but we'll take that. So we were there, and the nurse comes in and she says, I just want to tell you, that doctor was crying.
Was what?
The surgeon was crying, or the doctor was crying.
The ER doctor.
The ER doctor was crying. She said, you would just have him so tore up because y'all are so sweet.
Wow.
He did not want to come in here and tell you that. He asked her to come with him, and she's like, I'm not telling them either. They're too nice.
Wow.
So nobody wanted to be the ones to come give the nice couple the bad news. So we got to pray for the guy that did my blood work.
Yeah.
Great, super, super nice guy. And so we came home, and we had to work that night. We were pressure washing. And we were like, all right, we're gonna go to work. Jerry's like, you can stay home if you want to. I'm like, I've been working in pain for the past 6 months. Tonight isn't any different. So we go work, and I'm pressure washing, and I was praying, and I was like, okay, Lord, how do I make this about you and not about me? Mm-hmm. And he reminded me that I'm in a situation where I'm among people that I may never, ever have the opportunity to be around again. So make sure I tell them about Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm like,
this is where we live, dude.
all right, Jesus, it is. So I decided, I was like, whether it's cancer, whether it's not, makes no difference to me, because I became the living in the even if moment. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through the fire, and they said, I know our God can, but even if he doesn't, so I know my God can heal, but even if he doesn't, you will not cause me to bow.
Yeah.
I will not bow to you. So fear, you don't get to cause me to bow. You are not going to take away my shine. You are not going to take away my testimony, and you are not going to cause me to put something else on the throne of my heart besides my Jesus. So you can take that somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it's not staying here.
You're taking all the ammo away from the enemy because that's what he's trying to use.
Yeah.
And you're just nope.
Yeah. You want me to be fearful. So Jesus isn't the primary place in my heart.
Yep.
My fear is now the primary place. My situation is now my primary place. So that person that's in front of me that needs to know about the Lord may not know about the Lord because now I'm looking at my circumstance and I'm so wrapped up in what's happening to me that I don't see them. And they need to know Jesus because hell is very real, but so is freedom in Christ now. Yeah. Abundance in Christ. You can live a free life now. He paid for you. He paid for you to live an abundant life now too. So although that is all very, very real, there's life here to be had.
Yeah.
So the first lady that calls me, I pray for her, and she's a precious lady, and went through that. And then we go through all of these different stages of this process. And every stage has a new story. Every stage has a new testimony. Every stage has a new person. And so the day of my surgery, on the 2nd, I'm in the waiting room, and they call me into the little triage room to go through my paperwork. And the lady is sitting there, and she's flipping through the computer. She's scrolling, you know. She's like, I don't even know why you're in here. Your paperwork's done. I was like, I do. What do you need from Jesus? Because I know that my God doesn't do things by accident.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the screen and you're saying I shouldn't be in here, but they put me in here, then you must need something from Jesus. Like, that's just all there is to it. And I brought him with me. So tell me how I can help. So she was like, oh my goodness. So she tells me like the story of what she needs from the Lord or what she's seeking from the Lord. She knows the Lord, but there are people in her life that don't. And she's kind of seeking the Lord for them. And so we had the opportunity to pray for them and just go after it. And I prayed for, I guess, every person that I come in contact with. And they're like, that's the Jesus girl, with the exception of my anesthesiologist, who did not find the fact that if I die under your anesthesia, I'm going to be with Jesus very funny. I thought it was hilarious. But he didn't think it was funny, and he got very serious with me. But I love my Jesus.
Yeah.
And my life has been one little thing after another where the enemy's tried to be like, oh, let's derail you over here.
Yeah.
Let's make you doubt your God over here. Let's make you do this. Let's cause this dissension. Let's cause that. And I'm like, and there were 2 years in my life where he got me. Mm-hmm. But he will never, ever get that again.
Yeah.
Like, ever. Like, I'm like, no, sir. Not even, you will not cause me to doubt my God or take my Jesus off the throne of my heart ever again. I've done it once. I know that it leads to destruction. And I know the lives that are impacted when you do that versus the lives that are impacted when you keep Jesus on the throne of your heart.
There's some things that are very settled in our life.
So my life, it's been like that roller coaster of like, oh my goodness, this and that and da. You know, I've always known the Lord. Yeah. I've always wanted to serve the Lord. I've always wanted to teach and preach about the Lord. And I know that my God is good. I know that my God is sure, and I know that his word is true. Yeah. And when I had my surgery, I did end up having surgery. Pathology came back clear. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. But the Lord took me through, when I had my surgery, some very, very intimate times with him. Mm. I'm a very busy person. Yeah. I'm very driven. I work like 3 jobs. Like, it's just what I do. It's just what I do. I'm a very busy person. And the Lord took me through, you sit at home. Mm. You can't go to work. You can't even drive. I couldn't drive for 6 weeks. Yeah. Can't drive. I had a major surgery. The doctor said that he had never seen anything like it. It wound up actually being inside my cervix, which, by the way, 90% of the time, a tumor inside your cervix is not going to be non-cancerous. The cervical cancer, 9 times out of 10.
It weighed between 10 and 13 pounds. That's why she
it was
gained
huge.
so much weight.
10 and 13 pounds. It actually wound up being like more like the size of a football. Yeah, more like a football.
Yeah, it was like 7.5 inches wide by about 10 inches tall. It was about the size of a baby.
It was unbelievable. But so I had a major surgery. I had to have all of my organs were moved around, and he had to do tons of dissection and stuff. So it put me down for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for what came out of it afterwards, because what happened was I was forced into a slowdown, and it put me where all I did was listen to worship music and read my Bible. And I was like, oh, you poor people, when I come out of this, oh Lord Jesus, help them. And it refocused me. It wasn't that I was living in sin or that I was, I wasn't prior to my surgery, and I loved the Lord. I've loved the Lord for a long time. But it made me reprioritize my time with the Lord and prioritize my intimacy with the Lord. And what has come out of that is nothing short of phenomenal. I went back through my Bible and reread my Bible. If you are looking for a really good challenge, if you really want a challenge, now you have to be really committed. The 30-day shred on the YouVersion Bible, you read the Bible, and you will read the Bible in 30 days if you follow the reading plan.
Oof.
From Genesis to Revelation in 30 days. Wow. It's great. It's life-changing. I've done it a couple times now. It's fantastic. I'm telling you, look it up. 30-day shred. It's on the YouVersion Bible thing, which is great, which they have a lot of great Bible plans. Yeah. They really do. But that's obviously one of my favorites. But anyway, so what come out of it is this just amazing, ridiculous intimacy with the Lord that has been reshaped and refocused. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it yet. I haven't quite figured it out, whatever the Lord wants. But I'm just so good. I'm so good, and the Lord is so good. And I want to love Jesus and people well.
That entire story, from my perspective, was a constant reminder that perspective is everything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's beautiful to see just not only two people living sold out 100%, 100 miles an hour for Jesus, but then being able to look back and not look back and say, I should have, look back and say, this is what my perspective was, this is what my perspective could have been. Because unfortunately, for the most of us, like a lot of times we look back and say, had my perspective been accurate, I could have handled something differently and made the most of it or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I just want to thank you for sharing that, because I mean, I was like jotting down all kinds of stuff. Like, I want to ask about this. I want to ask about this. That's going to be a whole nother podcast. But this one,
y'all get me again. Woo!
Yeah.
Perspective is how you live.
And you can't go back and change the perspective you had. So it's important to always assess the proper perspective of where you're at.
So if the Bible says fight the good fight of faith, and faith could truly be translated as perspective.
Yeah.
You fight your fight is to maintain the perspective that he's king, he's good, and whatever the fire is insignificant. Doesn't matter. Not bowing. I'm not. It's not about the fire. It's about the God of the fire.
Amen to that.
I want to add, when I said that about my time with the Lord and what came out of it, and I said that I'm a busy person, something that we talk about frequently, and I just touch on it real quick, is that busyness is the biggest thief of intimacy.
Yeah.
So like we live in a society where we are constantly looking for the next thing to keep our minds busy, the next thing to keep our bodies busy, where we allow our yeses to things and our yeses to opportunities and our yeses to things, and they're all good things.
But one yes is how many no's? Like,
we have to be in a place where we do not sacrifice our intimacy with the Lord.
Yeah.
We have to
the first yes.
We have to be in a place where we spend time with him, we seek him, we sow into our relationship with him, and we have to remind ourselves that our busyness will take away from that. So we have to be very, very careful how we steward that busyness and steward that time.
Yeah, when you started talking about that, I had a weird smile on my face, because I get inspired and just start writing. That's kind of like most of my days. It's just like, stop, okay, like channeling, like, okay, God, like what?
Okay,
and I started writing. And so one thing that I started writing a few days ago was I never know what they're going to be. Most of the time they're not end up being sermons or conversations with people. But this one I'm like, maybe that's a podcast episode, because I started writing on the difference between being busy and doing things that matter.
Nice.
Because that's exactly
that's
in
so
the theme
good.
of what
That's
you're talking
good.
about.
Yeah.
Busyness is the thief of intimacy with God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just with him, but it's with your spouse, and with your physical body not maintaining not maintaining
I know
like
all about that.
you know what I mean. So it's a robber.
Yep.
Well, we thank you.
Hey,
thank you for giving us the opportunity. This has been a blast.
Goodness,
I love
y'all. Like,
this is so
you know
fun.
how Jerry has his gift with the word.
Yeah.
Like I'm always like, I mean, I think everybody's probably a little envious of that. But the gift I do have, which is a gift in some ways, and I'm choosing to not call it a curse, is that this technology stuff, like I'm really good at figuring out how to utilize it for the kingdom.
That's amazing.
Dude, that's amazing. We gotta have that.
But it gets in the way of the people part of it, because I'm always in the booth and this, and I don't get to people much. So I'm just happy and thank you guys for like meeting me in this situation with technology, just to give me an opportunity to like get to know you all and hear these stories, because they're amazing.
No,
So
this is great.
What you will hear from us most frequently is, how can we help? Because that's, I mean,
We got some great people around here that are like that.
Yeah, oh my goodness. This place is full of like, how can I best help you? Like it is like this place, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like our people.
Yeah.
It's nothing, and there's nothing like our pastor with talking about like church burnout the other day.
Yeah.
Or the other day. See,
Oh, yeah.
It was a few minutes ago, and I think it's the other day. Like he will not do that. He will not. It's just a line he won't cross. He's not going to put his people into that position. And I mean, you got to respect that. I mean, you just got to.
Let me pray it out. I'm going to start that as I've never prayed out of a podcast, so I want to make that's our thing, is we pray out of these podcasts.
awesome.
Jesus.
God, thank you for Jerry and Heather. Thank you for these stories. Thank you for the opportunities to sit and look at our stories and look at what you have done. And thank you for your providence. Thank you for everything that you've given us in your word and teaching us how to use that to navigate this world. Lord, all we want is you, and we just ask that this can go out and inspire other people to have that same desire and that same passion and that same perspective to just seek you first and foremost, Lord. We thank you and we praise you. In your son's name, amen.
Amen.
Oh my goodness, was that incredible. Now, don't say I didn't warn you, because I knew that was going to be a roller coaster, but what an incredible journey that was with Sister Heather. And peppered in there through one of the hardest moments anyone can go through in life. Oh man, it was just a nugget of some really beautiful but really simple wisdom from somebody that I know that this church loves and admires. When Heather was going through the death of her husband, and it was testing her faith, Brother Bob Chelly just kept reminding her two little words: don't disconnect. Man, I never got a chance to get to know Bob, but my time here has been filled with moments of just hope and joy and memories of what I know was just an incredible life and an incredible man of God. And it's so beautiful that when our faith is tested and when our just times are hard, just hearing two simple words to help us just remember to stay connected. And sometimes in life, it can feel like God has let us down. But when we accept that we don't know the things that God knows, our entire perspective shifts. And that's really what this whole podcast was about. It was just a beautiful, beautiful journey of perspective and just keeping our perspective focused on God. And when we do that, we start to understand how small our little puzzle piece is in the giant puzzle that God sees. And Heather put it beautifully when she was talking about how difficult it can be in those hard times, and And when we ask why God, she said, we have to find a place where we do not run God through the courts of our minds. That is so good. She followed that up with something even better when she said, God doesn't owe me an explanation. God doesn't owe me anything because he gave me everything. I don't know about you, but I just get goosebumps like reading back these little notes that I wrote of those amazing quotes because it's so true. I mean, if that doesn't preach, I don't know what will, right? That is powerful, and it's powerful because it's really the kind of foundational bottom line truth. God gave us everything. But our minds are designed to ask why, right? But we don't need to run God through the court of our minds. We don't have to know why. And when we don't know why, we have to make sure that doesn't change how we act, right? Like Sister Heather was saying, it shouldn't change how we pray for people. We still pray for healing. It shouldn't change our faith, even though it's hard. Goodness, that one's such a good one. I'm getting goosebumps literally reading notes on my paper. And I had so many notes while we were recording that, and then so many more when I was listening back. But one of the other ones, a little later on, she had said some words that were just as good when she was talking about our value and our identity. She said, our value and our worth has to be in the Lord. That way, nobody and no thing can shake it. Our identity has to be firm in the Lord. I mean, don't you love when just a few sentences can say as much as a full sermon, right? That is so good. Anyway, I could go on and on talking about how great Sister Heather's stories was and how much we can learn from it, but I'm just going to let you go back and listen to it again if you need to. So we thank Sister Heather and Brother Jerry for being our little guinea pigs of this new kind of Covenant Stories podcast. God, they were so great, and we had a great time doing this. So I encourage any of you listening, if you would like to share your story, there's a sign-up sheet at guest services on Sunday mornings, and I'll be going through those one by one each week. So watch out. I'm going to be calling somebody on Monday or Tuesday next week to see if I can get some more stories. So we really look forward to hearing more of our stories because we have an amazing congregation. It's not fair. Our church is so great. So we thank you for giving of your time and opening your hearts. And I really do hope that God was able to speak to you through this episode. We love you, and we look forward to seeing all your beautiful faces this Sunday morning. So until next time, this has been Pastor Andrew Newland for Covenant Life Worship Center. Have a great day, and God bless.